Two major criminal justice bills on the table in Annapolis. First, the ongoing debate on how to tackle juvenile crime, why some are not on board with the changes being made. Plus, tense moments over a bill to keep convicted sex offenders behind bars after the brutal murder of Pava LaPere.
Again, that's not what's happening in reality.
And what you're speaking to,
apparently, I don't know.
What you're speaking to is a sentencing issue.
A Baltimore business owner and cyclist says her support of bike lanes turned sour after a car hit her building.
At some point, we have to be like, this way isn't working.
Why she says the city's complete streets plan could be dangerous.
And I'm telling you that I don't feel safe.
A debate over plans to redevelop parts of Baltimore County. Why some residents say the plans will end up hurting students.
Then tracking more rain into the overnight. I'm breaking down the impact to your morning drive.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Two key criminal justice bills are on the table in Annapolis as lawmakers discuss a measure to limit early prison release for convicted sex offenders. The bill was introduced after the murder of Baltimore tech CEO Pava LaPere.
They are also debating Democrats' youth crime proposal calling for sweeping reform to the state's juvenile justice system.
You got to be frank, I'm really disappointed with it.
I feel good with where it's landing, largely.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. Today's juvenile crime hearing comes as Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown announces an organized crime takedown in Baltimore. 4 adults and 2 juveniles are accused of dozens of crimes over the course of a year, including murder, attempted murder, robberies, and carjackings. One juvenile is linked to at least a dozen violent acts.
The individuals would target victims who had just parked their cars or walking to and from their homes or getting gas.
One issue we continue to see, as witnessed in this case, is continued youth involvement in crime.
Prosecutors did not disclose the age of these juveniles, but did say one of them will be tried as an adult.
State Democrats hope to tackle some of Maryland's youth crime issues during a juvenile justice hearing this afternoon, but there's a growing divide about what should happen next.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost begins our team coverage in Annapolis.
The bill from top Democrats moving forward. We could see it on the floor of both chambers sometime this week. But included in this movement are some amendments, and that's where some lawmakers are growing frustrated. The printer trying to keep up with some of these changes to the bill language on the House floor Tuesday.
House Bill 814, juvenile law reform.
The big juvenile crime bill top of mind for many lawmakers this session. After coming out of the House committee late last week with some amendments, those changes read on the floor.
Amendment number 6 requires notice by a DJS intake officer of a decision not to file a petition to be provided electronically.
In total, 14 amendments included in the House version of the bill. Some small technical tweaks, others change what crimes kids between 10 and 13 can be charged with. Lawmakers approving the changes.
The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted.
But ultimately,
Madam Speaker, I'd move to special order this bill to the appropriate time tomorrow.
everyone will have to wait until at least Wednesday before casting a vote.
You got to be frank, I'm really disappointed with it.
Delegate Robin Grammer, who is a member of the House committee helping craft the policy plans moving forward, says he still wants more data about juvenile crime. Right now, the Department of Juvenile Services says juvenile crime statewide is declining, but that's now what we continue to hear from prosecutors and communities dealing with the realities of the crime crisis at home. And Grammer says he tried to require data reporting from each jurisdiction in Maryland, but that effort failed.
I'd love to have more guardrails around juvenile offenders that offend multiple times, juvenile offenders that commit various crimes. I'm really bugged about the lack of accurate data.
Across the hall,
I think the structure is right.
The Senate's version continues to be tweaked too. And the Senate committee Tuesday afternoon.
So we removed motor vehicle theft out of delinquency jurisdiction. The way we handle it is we put it into this mandatory sins petition filing for auto theft.
Expect to see some pushback on that change from lawmakers who have called for tougher penalties for kids who break the law. Senate President Bill Ferguson argues the sins process needs to be utilized more effectively.
Right now, I think there's still a lot of concern about its potential its lack of use and its kind of lack of impact.
The Senate committee also calling for a paper trail to be created from the time a juvenile is arrested. A report must be filed with DJS. The bill moving out of the committee with amendments, sending it to the floor potentially later this week, where even more changes could be made before a compromise is crafted and the bill moves one step closer to the governor's desk.
It's important to remember that the juvenile crime bill in both chambers are evolving. The changes and amendments that are included now might not make it to the final version. We'll keep a close eye to find out what's included and what's not as this process continues. In Annapolis, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Now, the Maryland Public Defender's Office is frustrated with this youth crime bill, saying it's not based on actual crime data. Natasha Darteague argues the bill focuses on measures that have been proven to fail in reforming young offenders. She says she'd rather see proactive plans that keep children away from committing crime. Many prosecutors in Maryland support the plan. Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates and Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy say the bills aren't about putting young people in jail. Rather, they argue the bills focus on safety and accountability.
I think one of the things we're so focused on our children, which is very important, but we also have to give focus on the victims.
We have victims who deserve justice. We have a community that deserves safety, and we have individuals who need to be taught a lesson. While I believe in appropriate punishment, appropriate sentencing, I also believe that we have to give people a realistic pathway to come home and be stronger and better citizens.
When it comes to changes in the bill, we have seen lawmakers pass watered-down versions of bills in the past. Former Governor Larry Hogan pushed for the Judicial Transparency Act for years. When lawmakers did finally pass that bill, it did not include some of its key points. The original bill would have published sentencing data with judges' names attached to better hold them accountable for the decisions that come out of their courtrooms. The bill lawmakers passed stripped judges' names out of the language, so sentencing data is just published based on jurisdiction. And when it comes to the juvenile crime bill, Pastor P.M. Smith says lawmakers need to listen to their constituents.
They are not listening to us. And your voting viewers need to take this position. When you stop listening to me, I stop voting for you. Stop sending them down there.
And that brings us to our question of the day. If juvenile crime legislation fails to pass, will it change the way you vote in the upcoming election? So far, 97% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Lawmakers are discussing a bill named after Baltimore Tech CEO Pava LaPere. She was killed in her apartment building last fall. The bill would limit early release from prison for the most violent convicted sex offenders. LaPere's mother spoke during the hearing this afternoon, and Fox 45's Keith Daniels joins us live with the very latest, including a heated exchange among those lawmakers today. Keith.
Well, Kai, that exchange involved some people who opposed the bill, with one senator pushing back, all of that coming after a mother pushed for support.
In Annapolis, pushing for the passage of Senate Bill 1098, known as
the Pava Marie LaPere Act.
LaPere's mother testifying at a hearing Tuesday before the Senate's Judicial Proceedings Committee. The family in favor of the proposed legislation.
I speak on behalf of myself, my husband, my son. We're committed to turning our horrific tragedy into a positive good.
The bill would prevent those convicted of violent sex crimes, first-degree rape, or a first-degree sex offense from earning so-called good time credits or diminution credit toward an early release from prison. The bill's sponsor, Senator William Smith Jr., has been a proponent for diminution credits. But now...
So why the proposed change? We have to balance rehabilitation and redemption with the superseding weight of public safety. That's why.
Police found LaPere's body on the roof of her apartment building in Mount Vernon last September. Police arrested Jason Billingsley, who's now indicted in her murder. Billingsley had received diminution credits and was released early from prison following a 2015 conviction on a sex offense. Among those standing at the hearing in support of the new legislation, Baltimore City Councilman and Public Chair Mark Conway and City State's Attorney Ivan Bates.
This bill sends a clear message that sentences for such heinous crimes will be fully enforced, and a convicted individual will face significant consequences for their actions.
But the hearing heats up with the opposing side.
Again, that's not what's happening in reality.
And what you're speaking
Well,
to,
apparently I don't
what you're
know what's-
speaking to is a sentencing issue. What you're speaking
No,
to
ma'am.
is.
No, ma'am.
Two public defenders with opposition, with pushback from Senator William Folden, the Republican from Frederick County.
This bill will not improve the safety of any of us in the community. All it does is increase sentence lengths.
We have these diminution credits that reduce these sentences significantly.
They do not reduce the sentences that significantly for crimes of violence. You see the 30 days, I believe.
Did you just miss the testimony that I heard? Here's an idea. Why don't we hold people accountable to the length of the sentence that they get?
Well, more debate is expected over this bill before the final vote. We should say Governor Wes Moore and Mayor Brandon Scott support this bill. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. LaPere's mother also spoke during a hearing regarding the Pava LaPere Legacy of Innovation Act. If passed, it would establish a new grant program for student entrepreneurs and startups in Baltimore.
This is an idea that originated from Pava herself, who knew well the impact of early stage grants, as her company, EcoMap, received a similar grant early on when they needed it the most.
Let's make money available. These young students have the ideas, they have the momentum and the energy. One thing they're lacking is the funding. We'll make the grants available so that they can keep their companies going.
Fox 45 News will continue to follow all of these bills in the coming days. For our complete coverage on session 2024, head to foxbaltimore.com.
If you feel your crime concerns aren't being heard, you can reach out to lawmakers. House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful voices in Annapolis. Their phone numbers and email addresses are on the screen.
Good evening, and so far we have only seen a taste of what is to come. We have a chance for some showers to come back our way later on tonight, but right now the radar is showing a fairly clean sweep. Get ready to see more activity as we head through the daytime tomorrow and especially tomorrow evening. All right, so we do have in effect a wind advisory that does go into effect as we move into late Wednesday. So that is going to happen. We're going to see winds gusting 50 miles per hour, but we're mostly just going to be seeing it as a chance for some showers tonight. We're going to track the rain, the wind, and talk about a major cold blast coming in as well in just a bit.
All right, Gerard, thank you. You can wake up with the Fox 45 morning weather team as they track these storms throughout the night. Meteorologist Justin Chambers will have your forecast and traffic impact at 4:30 a.m.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, emotional moments in court today during opening statements in the trial of Officer Keona Hawley's accused killer. What one officer said to his dying coworker when he pulled her out of her cruiser. Development drama in Baltimore County, why some residents say a plan to build new apartment buildings will make a bad situation in some schools even worse. And a Baltimore business owner backpedaling on bike lanes, how she says her support for the lanes turned sour after a car crashed into her building. We're one step closer to a rematch of the 2020 election as President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are the winners of tonight's Michigan primary election. Trump has now swept the first 5 states of this year's primary season, widening the gap with Nikki Haley, with Super Tuesday just 1 week away.
President Biden faced a unique challenge in his own party. Progressive leaders in Michigan called on residents to vote uncommitted on their primary ballots. They're protesting the president because of his support for Israel in its war against Hamas. Rashida Tlaib has been leading that out in that state, hoping a large uncommitted turnout could impact the president's foreign policy. Michigan is a swing state with one of the largest Arab populations in America.
When the street moved closer to us, I said to the community association that we were going to get hit, and they acted like I was crazy.
A Baltimore business owner says the addition of bike lanes in front of her business is creating more hazards on the road, including a car crash into her storefront.
Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live right now with her concerns and how the city has responded to this issue. Jeff.
Well, the city has long maintained that these bike lanes actually improve business. But that's a hard sell if you ask people like this business owner right over here, who says bike lanes and complete streets are putting her business at risk.
At the Fringe Salon in Remington lately,
A little crazy.
owner Laura Schneider
That's where they messed up.
is keeping her eyes on the client
Thinking that nobody was going to care about us enough to do anything about it.
and her ears on the road.
I have been in here being like, oh God, what if we got hit right now?
Overnight 2 months ago, it happened.
I was walking out to leave.
A driver here on 28th Street came barreling into the side of her salon.
As I was leaving, I saw brake lights all over the sidewalk.
When the city redesigned this road last summer, it eliminated a lane of traffic, added parklets and a bike lane, and moved the remaining lane of traffic closer to her salon. And making turns, she says, suddenly became a safety hazard.
And they don't realize that people are going like 50 miles an hour coming from the highway, and so they get T-boned and creamed.
The city calls this newly designed road a complete street, but Schneider is convinced this street is hardly a safe street for those on the road or near the road.
The street used to be 10 feet further.
She complains the construction had already begun before the community had a chance to speak.
They came in once and had us sign a petition, didn't mention anything about a bike lane. I saw what I signed, and it wasn't this.
Schneider is an avid cyclist herself. In fact, her love of bikes
Oh, the tattoo.
goes skin deep.
My actual literal favorite hobby is cycling.
But there's little love for the city's bike plan.
As a cyclist, I don't want to bike in traffic. And I think there's a lot of cyclists in the cycling community who love cycling and hate complete streets.
The city council has called a hearing for next week to examine complaints about complete streets.
I'm a big fan of bike lanes as traffic calming, and I do think that we just have to have a better way of communicating all of this and making sure everybody's part of the planning process.
At some point, we have to be like, this way isn't working.
The city has now installed concrete barriers to help protect her business.
Literally, my best friend used to live in the apartment upstairs. I think her car got totaled twice.
But for Schneider,
It's just true.
this street is hardly complete.
If your values are about cyclists and safety, well, I'm a cyclist, and I'm telling you that I don't feel safe.
Back live, you can see what's left of the corner of the business after that car crashed into the wall last month. That incident is likely to come up during the hearing at City Hall next Thursday. We're live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Thank you. Baltimore City is in the middle of a multi-million-dollar bike lane plan, but residents have been voicing frustration with the issue for months. Back in December on Harford Road in Hamilton, the city reduced a 4-lane road to 2 lanes to accommodate new bike lanes. But residents say they've seen traffic lined up for blocks with the bike lanes hardly getting any use. And last September in West Baltimore, 2 lanes of westbound traffic on Gwynns Falls Expressway or Parkway were cut to 1, leaving no lane for emergency vehicles. Former Baltimore Mayor Jack Young says he regrets a pro-bike lane proposal that he signed 5 years ago.
My thought was that we need to have alternative for people who ride bikes to be able to get around the city, but not to the magnitude of this. You know, it's just totally ridiculous how they're building all these bike lanes, putting these flex lanes up, and the streets look a mess.
Well, residents along Gwynns Falls Parkway say they aren't against bikes, but they want the city to stop building lanes on roads that can't accommodate them.
A shooting this evening near a shopping center in Towson. What we're learning from police.
Some big expectations for Grayson Rodriguez as the O's former first rounder gets set to enter his second season in the show. His biggest takeaways from year 1 to year 2. That's coming up next on Sports Unlimited.
Getting ready for more active weather to come our way. Had a little bit of rain today, but we're getting a lot more on the way as we head into your Wednesday. We're going to track that. Here are your weather headlines. The rain and thunderstorms, also tracking some gusty winds. We'll be also seeing a huge temperature drop as we get just past tomorrow. Get ready to see a lot of changes coming. We're tracking them for you.
Gerard, thank you. You can watch Fox 45 News for free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus. Opening day is just over a month away. Soon we'll be hearing the, wait a minute, I can't do it, crack of the bat. Close. As the Orioles will welcome the LA Angels to Camden Yards March 28th. This is the first time the O's are starting the season at home since 2018. Right now, spring training is off to a sizzling start in Sarasota, Florida. The O's have won 4 of their first 5 games. Rocco DeSangro is in town in Florida with a look at how the O's and one of their top pitchers wants to grow his second season.
Welcome into Sarasota, where the Orioles continued Grapefruit League play today with a 5-2 win over the Detroit Tigers in Grayson Rodriguez's first start of spring training. And it's a much different situation for Rodriguez from year 1 to now in year 2. In a rhythm early on, that long ball to opposite field was the lone blemish on his final line, a ball he says he left up. Rodriguez had his fair share of ups and downs in year 1, from not breaking camp despite expectations to getting called up, sent down, and called up again. Rodriguez learned a lot about himself as a pitcher. His biggest takeaway from his rookie season in the show, how to navigate the big leagues.
Going into your rookie year, really don't know what to expect. This year, this I guess it feels a little bit more normal to me. knowing what's going to happen throughout the season, know how to get through a season, and how to be successful.
While it wasn't the final outing Rodriguez would have hoped for in Game 2 of the ALDS against the Texas Rangers, he had a stellar second half to the season, posting a 2.58 ERA in those 13 starts. Brandon Hyde, the O skipper, looking forward to watching him grow as a pitcher even more in year 2.
We expect a lot out of him this year, and still only his first full year, and he's still really young, but he's got great stuff, and he showed the second half what kind of pitcher he's got a chance to be.
With the availability of both John Means and Kyle Bradish in question going forward, the O's will need their 24-year-old former first-rounder to go out there on the mound, do his thing, and as Birdland likes to say, gas him up. For now in Sarasota, Rocco DeSangro for Sports Unlimited.
Well, some O's fans making the trip down to Sarasota to enjoy the warmer weather and some winning baseball. Deb chimed in with this video from her seats today, getting a great view down the first baseline. Fantastic. She's so close. And we want to see how you're getting ready for baseball season. Scan the QR code on your screen, which will take you to the Chime In page at foxbaltimore.com. You can also upload all your pictures and videos there or through the WBFF app.
We should not be doing any kind of building.
We have to be able to walk and chew gum all at the same time.
Mixed reaction to Baltimore County's new development plans. Ahead at 10:30, why some residents say their concerns aren't being heard.
I'm Kayla Gaskins. Coming up, the issue Americans are most likely to say is the biggest problem facing the United States and how those poll numbers are driving political pivots.
We're following three big stories at 10:30. Several high-profile lawmakers are making a political pivot on their border views. Why experts say recent gang activity is forcing their hand.
Opening arguments begin in the trial of one of the suspects in BPD officer Keona Holly's murder. What body cam footage could reveal about the morning she died.
And revitalization is apparently the key word as Baltimore County developers look to expand. But a large group of residents aren't happy with those plans. Well, tonight, many of those community members gathered to voice their concerns and frustration with the county's recent development plans.
That's right. Fox 45's Jessica Babb joins us live with her message in Perry Hall. Jessica?
Residents say they want to make sure schools aren't overcrowded and they want to make sure there's infrastructure to support new development. While they say affordable housing and new apartment complexes aren't the answer, others in the community say the need is critical. Inside this Perry Hall library is this packed room full of Baltimore County residents disagreeing with development.
We should not be doing any kind of building.
Saying no to big apartment complexes and other proposed projects across the county.
There are some people who hate the suburban lifestyle.
Baltimore County Councilmember David Mark says in his district, White Marsh Mall is one area that's top of mind.
I was able to kill 320 units, but we clearly have to do a better job of planning for what happens around White Marsh Mall.
For areas that need revitalization,
I do not want to see a dead mall there. But it's not just creating a sea of apartments at White Marsh Mall. We have to have the roads fixed, some open space, good connections to public resources, and we have to fix the schools.
He says he wants development to be thoughtfully planned and says infrastructure has to come first.
Well, there's an awful lot of housing units already out there. I would say that we welcome all suggestions from all people, but we're not going to be pushing this process along at breakneck speed.
It's a concern echoed across the county.
I think that it all needs to be done strategically.
Residents in this room, like Jeff McDonald, also wanting to put a stop to legislation being considered in Annapolis, which could pave the way for more housing projects.
We can fight this.
But on the other side of the argument, others like Nick Stewart, the co-founder of We the People in Baltimore County, says the need for this development is dire.
There is a housing crisis in our county and in the state of Maryland.
He says it's part of the solution for abandoned and dilapidated areas.
What we were talking about was only about creating a certain amount of housing in connection with those abandoned properties that exist in our county. It wasn't about making our county a city.
Stewart says addressing the infrastructure can be addressed during the development process, something County Executive Johnny Olszewski has also said.
We have to be able to walk and chew gum all at the same time.
Lawmakers will be discussing Senate Bill 484, a bill related to affordable housing, in a hearing on March 1st. Live in Baltimore County, Jessica Babb, Fox 45 News.
Jessica, thank you. Well, last week, the Baltimore County Council signed off on its master plan, which charts future development in the county over the next decade. But County Executive Johnny Olszewski withdrew a second piece of legislation that sought to rezone certain abandoned commercial hubs. Several county council members say the original bill didn't give them any say in where that development would happen. Olszewski is now offering a compromise.
We now have a bill that we think all the council members can and should support, and that will still allow for some opportunities for revitalization across Baltimore County.
This bill puts more authority back in the hands of the community via the county council person who represents them.
Opponents of the new plan say they're still concerned the public could be left out of the discussion.
Baltimore County Police are investigating a shooting this evening along Lockland Circle in Towson. It happened near the Lock Raven Plaza Shopping Center. Police say an adult was taken to the hospital around 6 o'clock. We'll keep you updated as we learn more information about this story.
Emotional moments in court today as opening arguments are underway in the trial for one of the suspects in the murders of Baltimore police officer Keona Holley and another man in 2021. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell has the new developments as the jury is shown body camera footage from the morning of the murders.
The ambush came from her left. That was the state's opening line to the jury. Assistant State's Attorney Kirk Bjorklund outlining his case against defendant Elliot Knox in what he described as the December 16th, 2021 executions of Baltimore police officer Keona Holley and then civilian Justin Johnson. Bjorklund telling the jury Knox's attempts to minimize his role don't matter according to the law. And Knox is guilty of everything he's charged with. In court documents, Knox admits to being present for both murders, but claims it was his co-defendant, Trayvon Shaw, who pulled the trigger both times. Both men were charged with both murders. In opening statements, Knox's attorney argued the evidence will not prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, telling the jury what my client admitted to was accessory after the fact, to hiding the weapons. He did not murder Mr. Johnson. He did not murder Officer Holly. The state then moving to witness testimony, first calling several members of the Baltimore Police Department to the stand, including Sergeant Crawford, who worked with Officer Holly and was the first to respond to her scene, Officer Taylor, who responded as a crime scene tech, Sergeant Dickens, who responded to the scene of Justin Johnson's homicide, and Sergeant KV, who took part in the arrest of Knox. During these testimonies, the jury viewed body-worn camera footage, foxtrot video, and images of evidence collected from both scenes, including shell casings. The most emotional testimony coming from Sergeant Crawford, who had been working with Officer Holly that shift. He recalled leaving to get gas in his cruiser and then seeing a call about a vehicle crash. The state played his body-worn camera footage showing the sergeant approach Holly's crashed cruiser and realize she had been shot. Officer Holly's family emotional, tears streaming down their faces, some having to leave the courtroom as the video showed Holly being pulled out of the cruiser. One officer is heard saying, "Keep fighting. Come on, Holly. Come on, girl. Squeeze my hand. That's it." The family, quiet leaving the courthouse yesterday, saying they'll be leaning on their faith in God and the justice system.
It's been challenging. It's been challenging, but we have each other. We are a praying family, and we're finding our way through it. We know that, God doesn't make mistakes, so everything happens for a reason. And we just leave everything up to him.
Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Neither the state nor defense has hinted at a motive in Holly's murder. The state will continue to call witnesses tomorrow, and then it will be the defense's turn. For our full coverage on the trial and any new developments, head to foxbaltimore.com.
An 8-year-old is dead and 2 others are in critical condition after a row home fire this morning in Highland Town. Fire officials say it happened around 2 o'clock this morning on Lombard Street. All 3 victims were found unconscious inside that house and taken to nearby hospitals. Fox 45 News spoke to one neighbor who says she witnessed first responders performing CPR.
They had a stretcher with one of the small people and they were pressing their chest. We can rebuild houses, but you can't get lives back. So I'm glad I'm alive, but I know that they're hurting.
Well, officials say about 20 residents were displaced. The Red Cross and Monzi's Victim Services team are now working to relocate them and provide assistance, but it is unclear what led up to the fire.
Taking a look now at the Fox Box, top left President Biden and House Speaker Mike Johnson say they're optimistic about avoiding a government shutdown after an Oval Office meeting today. The deadline is Friday, with border funding and Ukraine aid remaining a sticking point among lawmakers.
On the top right, conservatives in California are pushing for another recall vote against Governor Gavin Newsom, accusing him of abandoning his state to pursue presidential aspirations. The governor has never hinted at any intent to run for president, calling this recall attempt wasteful.
Bottom left, crews are battling at least 4 wildfires in the Texas Panhandle. The largest blaze has expanded to more than 200,000 acres since it ignited yesterday, and it's still 0% contained. Officials say the fires are driven by gusting winds and dry conditions.
And on the bottom right, 2 men have been found guilty for the murder of Jam Master Jay. Jason Mizell is his name, the DJ of the iconic hip-hop group Run DMC. He was killed in 2002, but that case stayed open for years. Both suspects had close relationships with Jam Master Jay, a childhood friend, and his godson.
Some lawmakers argue gangs in the U.S. are taking advantage of America's border laws, forcing some politicians to pivot on their border stances. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has this story.
Venezuelan gangs, increasingly a problem for NYPD. A violent criminal organization called Tren de Aragua recruits illegal migrants who arrived in New York City.
It is a right to live in this city, and you should be not committing crimes in our city.
The problem, spurring New York Mayor Eric Adams to make a drastic political pivot.
We need to modify the sanctuary city law that if you commit a felony, a violent act, we should be able to turn you over to ICE and have you deported.
If these changes proposed by Adams had already been in place, ICE could have deported the Venezuelan illegal migrant Jose Antonio Ibarra before he left New York City for Athens, Georgia, where he's charged with the murder of 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. Ibarra had previously been arrested in New York City for child endangerment, but was released.
Our country let this woman down. Unfortunately, though, as I said, she's not going to be the last. What more do we need as a nation to stop the chaos and lawlessness at our border?
This comes as new Gallup polling records a record high 55% of Americans see illegal immigration as a critical threat.
More unidentified migrants in this country can often mean more crime. We need to know who is here.
The same poll also finding Americans are most likely to say immigration is the most important problem facing the U.S.
President Biden and former President Donald Trump will both visit the border this Thursday as they attempt to show voters they're the one most equipped to address this crisis ahead of November's election. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. What do you think is the most important problem facing the country? Immigration,